Welcome to Cherokee Coffee Talk, the Autism Awareness Month, or Acceptance Month as we call it, for April. Today I have Crystal Hernandez, Dr. Crystal Hernandez, and Jamie Murphy, a prominent Cherokee activist when it comes to autism and just bringing awareness to our tribe, as well as Hernandez. She's Cherokee women. Thank you for being here today, and let's start off with Crystal. Tell us about yourself.
I am a mother of three with my youngest, who is autistic. I am a Cherokee citizen. I'm also an administrator for the Department of Mental Health. I do run 3 facilities, including 2 psychiatric hospitals, one of which is a forensic hospital. I am Black Feathers podcast, which is a national podcast on tribal disabilities, specifically focused on intellectual and developmental disabilities. I do that with a co-host under ACL and State of the States for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. I'm on the board of the ARC of Oklahoma, as well as the Autism Foundation of Oklahoma. I'm part of a new coalition, Tribal Voices, which focuses on disabilities in Indian country. I present at a number of conferences on topics related to mental health, forensic services, adjudicative competency, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and all sorts of other things. But first and foremost, like I said, I'm a mom, and this is why I do what I do. This is my son's future. This is my son's life, and they definitely need to be heard, and they need to be seen, and so do we as parents.
Jamie?
Dang, that's quite a repertoire. I don't think I can match that. I am Jamie Murphy. I am a tribal citizen of the Cherokee Nation. I live here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Of the home, we have 2 boys. We have one outside the home who's old enough to be outside the home. We have a 30-something, a 14-year-old who's about to graduate 8th grade. And our youngest, who is Austin, he is 9, and he is the one that has ASD. Mild version with some developmental delay and some educational delays, but he keeps us on our toes. I have a Mass Comm degree from NSU and Indigenous Peoples Law master's degree from the University of Oklahoma. And I currently work for Tribal Tech LLC as a contracted communication specialist for the Administration for Native Americans, supporting the Office of the Commissioner, where, by the way, if you're not aware, we do grant funding for Native American and tribes, governments, community organizations all across the world, including Guam, Alaska, the United States, and Hawaiian Islands and things like that. So feel free to look us up, Administration for Native Americans, if you're interested. We just got finished with our NOFOs in March, so we'll be awarding some really great organizations here soon with some grant funding. So like you said, I just advocate for people in general, not necessarily just autistic children or adults, but just advocate for our Cherokee people in general. We have a lot of work to do in many areas, one of which is special needs in general and autism especially.
Absolutely. Well, I'll first start it off with excuse me. I get probably once a month, I get somebody commenting in on the coffee talk about special needs and autism and the workforce. They've got kids that are now adults, and I just had a at-large citizen down in Alabama reach out going, what can the tribe do for my son? I need help. I don't know what to do. Besides finding a job, it's just living day to day. And is there services that are local to them? Or is there something a roadmap that our tribe could give them to say, hey, please contact these folks, X, Y, and Z? Any guidance there?
Biggest thing that we need to talk about is, number one, we've seen a lot of movement when it comes to recognizing, diagnosing, and kind of servicing our pediatric population. But what we fail to do is realize that they grow up and that they turn into teens, then they turn into young adults, and then elderly. And so I think we have, deserts where there's lack of services, lack of supports, and there's just hit or miss transitional services. And that's what we're really talking about. Some states really allow for those transitional services to go up to 25, some 23, some 21. It really just depends on the state and the resource and the infrastructure, as well as the statutes and the protections for individuals in special education. And so I would say that, number one, talk to your Department of Education, look and see how long they cover someone under special education and they're allowed to stay into their educational system for supports and services. I would also look for specialized programs. A lot of colleges are now launching special programs for individuals that are different learners. And so it gives them an opportunity to get their education. It gives them the supports and resources that they need. Housing sometimes is tied into that, and also supports for the caregivers and families that are kind of wrapping around the system. So again, it's going to be hit or miss, but you have to do some research. And unfortunately, that's the biggest problem when we talk about any type of difference or a service need, is that you have to know something to find the something. And that's where we have to do the biggest amount of work, is people don't know what they don't know. And how can you expect them to have a resource to get a resource, or to know about how to navigate a system? They're already overwhelmed. This is not their expertise. This is not what, they went to school for, or they shouldn't have to fight for basic rights.
And that kind of leads on to my next thing is, we talk about in school IEPs, and then what is it? 504s. Yeah. I have actually 2 kids on the 504 right now, and I'm still getting educated on that. And my daughter, who's getting ready to graduate, she's on a 504, but it's a little bit different situation. She has that. It's a disability where if an instructor's speaking in class, everything's just gibberish to her. And she has to record it and go back and relearn it, and so forth and so on. Educating the instructors and the school systems on, even at the college level, on what a 504 is. That's been, I think, another part of this whole thing, even working locally with our different school systems, of educating all the teachers when our kids, I've always, as a parent, been terrified when I get to the junior high level with my child, because it's been great in the elementary. They're aware of it, but it's, going on. Will they get kind of left behind a little bit, or running into that teacher that just doesn't understand what we go through?
I was just talking about this with somebody else the other day, because, Austin's still in elementary school, and I have PTSD of when he first was being diagnosed, or pre-diagnosis, and on how things felt as a parent in the school system. One, unaware and uneducated in it. And then I had a friend who recently had some problems with an after-school program. And it wasn't necessarily that that the kid couldn't be maybe treated the best way possible. It was the fact that the folks that were supposed to be treating him weren't educated in it. Granted, after school programs, like I said, they're not a necessity. Therefore, they're not required to give that to those children. However, I do believe that if you're going to offer one, you should be able to give these kids and young adults the same as what you would be giving the other kids that you're not having to deal with. I think their words were, he has 3 days to fix it, or he can't be here anymore.
Yeah.
And I got I was like, she told me about it, and I just like you, I have people that ask questions all the time, and I kind of freaked out a little bit, and I had a PTSD moment of what I had to deal with whenever Austin was first diagnosed. I'm out of the school system and getting him tested myself, and then entering him back a year later. And so I contacted the local Boys and Girls Club. I said, we've got to do something different with the staff members that you have. I Googled, I looked for things. Crazy enough, Boys and Girls has a national program, an education program, and they were unaware. And I said, please consider this. You just got hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Cherokee Nation, hundreds of thousands. There's no reason why we can't do this. And, and she was really great to talk to me. Sharon is her name. And totally understood where I was coming from. Because again, we can't fault people for what they don't know. And we throw a lot of these people that get into these jobs into the lion's den, and they just don't know. They're not equipped. They just don't know how to handle things. But if we can provide education, we can provide awareness. Anyway, so long story short, she's looking into it, which I'm thrilled about. And she's going to maybe consider it for her staff first. And then perhaps she asked if I would be on a panel, to kind of give like this kind of question answer format for teachers and staff. And I was like, heck yes, I would. I will get you other people that would be interested in doing that. I said, because it's not about you doing it wrong. It's about what can you do to do better and make it right. And I said, I can't. Again, I'm just excited that they're considering that. And then I was going to say too that elementary school has been really great since then, right? And it's all about what a parent, a provider is willing to put into it and educate themselves and make them aware and work. Sadly, you got a lot of parents out there, providers in the home that don't. And once a school system realize you're a parent that's going to advocate and you're not going away, you're going to be there and you're going to listen and you're going to do the work on my end. If I expect them to be doing work, I should be willing to do the same.
Absolutely.
And that's been outstanding. But I kid you not, like the same way with you, I fear junior high. I fear high school.
It's a very impressionable 2 or 3 years.
I fear puberty. Like as a parent, I don't even know. There are no resources out there. I mean, there are resources out there that I can find myself. But as a tribal citizen, it would be great to have a home that is there for us as parents and caregivers to find these resources for us or already have them available for us. So he's only 9, so I got a minute.
Crystal, what do you think on educating our instructors in school systems? Or is there, I mean, just like Jamie said, we spent a lot of money, giving to the Girls and Boys Club recently. And I know that's been around. What they were looking at that as after school programs or something like that. But how could, as a pilot program or something like that,
and we have to make it a part of our strategic priorities through our school systems, through our support systems, like after school programs, for example, daycares, things like that. Because CDC just released their new statistics, which is no surprise. It's 1 in 36 children now are autistic. And then again, just a reminder, they grow into teens who grow into adults. It's not just a pediatric thing that kind of falls off. So we have to start talking about it. With my own child, being that advocate in the room, as Jamie mentioned, like you have to know, I started my career as a forensic psychologist and I saw children, but it was only if they were victims of crime, perpetrators of offenses, things like that, or CPS cases. And, going through my own journey to get his diagnosis was a nightmare. And they didn't listen. Just wait. He's a boy. They're all different, et cetera, et cetera. And even when I got through the door to actually get the evaluation, it was flawed. The person never read the file, basically had all the instrumentation laid out and didn't use any of it. And I said at the end of it, hey, you didn't do anything. It was only 45 minutes or so. And she's like, well, I got everything I need. I said, but you didn't use the Vineland. You didn't use your ADOS. You didn't use your ADIR. She's like, how do you know what all that is? So I'm like, clearly you didn't read the file. I'm a psychologist literally a couple miles from here. I actually went to grad school with your supervisor. And so it took that moment for me to realize, like, we are failing. We're failing at education. We're failing at all the things that are important to change someone's life for the good or the bad. Right. And so, he went ahead and I talked to the supervisor, got a second opinion, all of that. But we went ahead and allowed that first report to come back. And it was repetitive motion disorder because he paced on his tiptoes, and expressive receptive language delays. Right. And so the second opinion, obviously, he's autistic. And, going through that process, he's a level 2. So he has some support needs. He does not have an IQ issues, but there's so many other things that he needs. And so going through that educational journey for him, has been really difficult because, like you said, that a lot of these professionals jump into these careers with, very little supports because of either funding, infrastructure, whatever. And so as parents, we have to do our part to educate ourselves, to try to advocate, but also to wrap around them, because some of them are trying so hard to do what's right. And so I actually train a lot of people just free, just kind of go out. I train them. I myself went back and went, all over the world just to try to find how to become a developmental psychologist so that I can understand, how do these instruments work? What are the normative data?
Right.
Where are the gaps? How can I kind of inform? What is the ideal law? Let me look at 504 plan structure, IEPs. Let me go ahead and look at some of the states have specialized evaluations that really are a layer above that. So basically, if somebody has a 504 plan or is on an IEP or both, some states have assembly bills or Senate bills that really do an extra layer that take that, qualifying condition from the school professionals, and then it takes it to an actual doctoral level psychologist who looks at all of that, interviews everyone, does a kind of a observational process, and then creates an additional plan of additional supports that are needed so that this individual has a thriving life. And so then the school has to find funding, whatever the recommendations are, to make those things happen. And so we know that it's not one size fits all. We know that there's some school districts and some schools and some, teachers and superintendents and all of those things that do better than others. We know those that have personally been impacted by this walk do better because they know what it feels like to be on the other side.
Yes.
I hear horror stories over and over about, IEPs. Basically I wasn't included in the meeting. My voice didn't matter. They sat there and judged me. They talked above my head, and they made me sign something. Don't sign anything. If you don't know what you're signing, don't sign it. If you need an assistant to come with you, a lot of these nonprofits, these Oklahoma autism nonprofits, they have advocates that they can assign to you. If you feel like your rights are being violated, you can call or email the Disability Law Center. You can find a way to protect your voice and your child.
Right.
And it's not to make it adversarial by any means, but sometimes you're put in that position. I would say
a lot.
Yeah. First come to the table and try to be a partner.
Like 5 people in there all at once. It can be a stressful.
Oh yeah.
IEPs are stressful. And honestly, you get in there and you sit down at a table, and especially in the beginning when you're not really sure how things work.
Right.
I mean, I've cried. I couldn't tell you. I've probably cried at 2 IEPs. So far I've been better at them since then. But it could be nerve-wracking. But you're right. They have advocates that will sit with you, that will talk you through it.